Hi everyone, Bandanner here. I hope you're all doing well. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to the first of this week's WARNO devlogs. And apologies if you can hear any noise in the background. The next door neighbours are having some work done. So today we get a look at the first of the Army General campaigns coming with Northag, and that is 4 Days To Weser, which sounds an awful lot like the credit card company. Anyhow, a little explanation of what these Army General campaigns are. So, the Northag expansion will feature 2 new massive turn-based Army General campaigns, both centered on Northag command, detailing 2 new powerful Warsaw Pact thrusts into NATO-controlled territory. The northern offensive is aimed at Bremen and sees the East Germans strike through the still mobilizing Dutch First Corps around the Lüneburg area. This campaign is obviously the one we're looking at today, and that is 4 Days To Weser. The southern strike is around Hanover, and it is there that the communists run into trouble early on, giving the reinforcing British time to bring up heavy tank reinforcements. This in turn sees the hasty deployment of some additional mechanized Polish units. The name for this Army General campaign will be Armored Fury, and will be detailed in a future devblog. So next up, they've given us some historical context. So NATO's Northag command, as we already mentioned a couple of times, was the cobbling together of 4 different NATO corps from 4 different nations, all under unified British command. From south to north, these were the Belgians, British, Dutch and West Germans, backed up by some additional pre-positioned American forces. Glancing at the numbers and equipment on paper, it looked like a very strong command, but in reality Northag was closer to an idol made with feet of clay. Made up of many different national armies, political pressures from various governments and conflicting policies were rife. For example, the Belgian army's outdated equipment, the Dutch army's questionable decision to keep the majority of its troops home to be mobilized in case of war, lack of standardization, etc., were all issues identified in the 1980s. While the Americans believe Fulda to be the most likely flashpoint and invasion route of World War III in West Germany due to the proximity of a whole bunch of military and civilian infrastructure in the Frankfurt/Middle Rhine area, the terrain was not very favourable to large-scale manoeuvres. Soviet High Command, seeing the benefit of keeping at least some of NATO's attention fixed, was all too happy to oblige and play their part. Maskirovka? I think that's how you pronounce it. It's a deception to fix substantial Centag forces in that sector. Meanwhile, the North German plains, essentially the whole of Northag, was perfect for massive mechanized warfare. Furthermore, the disparaged multinational forces were perceived to be a key weakness, more fragile and prone to break if enough pressure was brought to bear. Silly Soviet forces thinking the British would break. It's not like the French were up there. A little bit of national jibing aside, the war front. So in our war scenario, which you already should be familiar with thanks to WARNO's base game Centag's Army General campaigns, the Warsaw Pact first launches several strong offensive thrusts across the inner German border, including Fulda. However, these are diversionary tactics. The sole Soviet 8th Guards Army is in the lead here, flanked and followed by an array of East German forces. Frankfurt was to be threatened or captured if possible, but seizing it wasn't mandatory. The primary purpose of this offensive was to fix the American and West German attention and troops as much as possible. Further north, the Soviet 1st Guards Army quickly attacked west, its path mostly opened in the initial covert ops raid at Kassel Airport. This thrust was aimed at Northag's soft underbelly, the 1st Belgian Corps. In the meantime, further up north, the rest of Northag was bracing itself, but eerily quiet. Apart from some artillery duels, small-scale attacks and airstrikes, but this wouldn't last long. Another little heading, Northag under pressure. So with the Belgian 1st Corps under pressure from the whole of the Soviet 1st Guards tank army, Northag was forced to react. The British 1st Corps diverted its 3rd Armoured Division and West Germans its 7th Panzer Division to the south. This also had the dangerous effect of forcing the rest of NATO's divisions to shift their front or relocate to fill the gaps. This was, of course, the moment the Warsaw Pact had waited for. The Northern Communist Army groups started their 2 main attacks on Northag on June 23rd, 72 hours into World War III. The northern one is East German led on the Lüneburg-Bremen axis, while the southern one is Hanover-Osnabrück axis, as mentioned briefly before. But let's have a little bit more detail on the 4 Days To Weser. So this new Army General campaign takes place in the Lüneburg area south of Hamburg. Though Hamburg will be visible on the northern edges of the map, it won't be part of the campaign. It is situated across an unpassable river Elbe and is part of NATO's Landjutz theatre of operation. Cough, hint future expansion, cough. So in the new Army General campaign, an area of responsibility of the 1st Dutch Corps is the covering force area, a part of West Germany jutting into East Germany. This area has already been evacuated following pre-war plans. Surrounded on 3 sides by communist territory, it would have been complicated to defend this death trap. This shortening of NATO's defensive lines allowed the Warsaw Pact troops to cross the Elbe and advance on Limburg in force and relatively unmolested. I've just realised they've spelled Elbe above, but it should be Elbe, the second way I've said it. The East German objective is to continue the attack and cross the Weser River near Hamburg within 4 days before NATO can muster enough reinforcements to mount a concerted effort to defend this natural obstacle. Another subheading, the opposing forces. The 4 Days To Weser offensive has been entrusted to the East German 5th Army, operating independently. Unlike the 3rd Army against Sonntag's armies, this army is made up of the 8th and 19th Motorisierte Schützen Division. The elite and well-equipped 9th Panzer Division, featured as a playable division, and the 20th Motorisierte Schützen Division, which is a partly mobilized division with T-72s in its tank regiment. These National Volksarmy formations are backed by a host of smaller detachments, including 2 powerful Soviet independent tank regiments equipped with the T-64B main battle tanks. Opposing the Communists is a verifiable tower of battle of NATO forces, chiefly the West German 3rd Panzer Division and the Dutch 41st Panzer Brigade, a lone Dutch formation actually stationed in West Germany. Additionally, support comes from the US Army's 2nd Armoured Division's 3rd Brigade forward, pre-deployed to the area. The main forces of the Dutch 1st Corps, 1st and 4th Divisie, were supposed to be at their pre-arranged combat positions within 48 hours, being transported from the Netherlands. However, in the chaos of war, including major transportation issues, strikes on critical infrastructure, a sumptuous sprinkling of Soviet Spetsnaz sabotage, and raid actions in the rear have clearly derailed this overly optimistic Dutch mobilization plan. NATO has the objective of holding the East Germans at bay long enough for the Dutch main reinforcements to finally show up. Then it's either about stabilizing a defense or ideally a counterattack when the opportunity arises. For the Warsaw Pact, the war goal is simple: break through the enemy defenses as soon as possible and seize the objective across the Weser before the offensive stalls. And that's everything for today's devblog. Apparently on Thursday, we'll be getting a look at the first operation coming to Northag, running the Gauntlet. Thank you as ever for watching. Please do like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you all later in the week for the next devblog.